Why do I have this duck? Because I'm about to fabricate and use all of it. But why is it dancing? Because he's happy to be part of something great. Now let's take a look at what you're about to see in this video. Alright, let's get on to the duck fabrication. Here's a duck. Has 2 legs, 2 wings, neck skin, and 2 breasts. So first you always want to remove the insides. Inside you'll find a neck. We're going to save that for stock. Liver. I like to save them for duck liver pate or mousse, but that'll have to be another episode. Heart and gizzards. Most people would use them in a gravy. I would just prefer to feed them to the dog. Make an incision where the breast meets the leg and push the legs down. Leaving them on at this point allows for better stability. Now remove the neck skin and set aside. We're going to use that later. Now cut right down the middle, riding along the rib cage below the breast. Slowly work your knife along the ribs to free up the breast. When you get to the top, there's a collarbone. You want to cut beside that so you don't lose any meat there. Then down to the front of the wing, and you're free. Now do the exact same thing on the other side for the other breast. Cutting right through the armpits should remove the wings with very little effort. Now turn the bird over. Notice there's a little bump next to the backbone. That's a little pocket of meat called the oyster. In French they call it saute lilas, which literally translates to the fool leaves it there. Don't be the fool. So you want to continue the cut you started earlier, making sure to stop by and scoop out that little nugget of love. Pop the leg joint and continue down the side of the spine to remove the leg. And look, the other side is the same again. Isn't symmetry great? Now you can use a knife, scissors, or your hands to break apart the carcass to use for stock later. Make sure you get any skin off and place it with the neck skin. Then trim any large sections of fat on your legs. On the breast you'll have this little flap of meat hanging. That's the tenderloin, and I usually save that as a little snack while I'm cooking. Trim up any fat around the edges and any cartilage or silver skin that might be on it. Flip it over and gently score the skin on a bias with long strokes, being careful not to cut through the flesh. There's a lot of different scoring methods, but this is just how I do it. There you go. You may need to use a towel if it's too slippery. As for the wings, some like to make crispy wings out of it, and that's cool. It's a little tough for me, so I just assume throw it in the stock. Now every chef out there has their own opinion as to what knife you should use, but they're not here, are they? So I'm gonna give you my opinion. If you have a really sharp knife that you're comfortable with, use that. And a boning knife is the most common selection for this job, but I use my 10-inch chef knife for almost everything. So now that you've fabricated your duck, what do you do with it? Here I've written a dish that's a little over the top with a lot of different elements. While everything is balanced and works well together, the intentions were less about trying to make a dish that would be replicated and more about demonstrating some techniques you can use and think about to create your own duck dish. Here's my menu. Duo of duck. Duck confit with nutmeg scented breasts. Duck fat roasted sweet potato. Roasted Brussels sprouts. Pickled shallot. Macerated cranberry. Crispy skin. And an orange bourbon sauce. Now we're on to confit. So confit is the one part of this whole dish that takes the most time. So if you're planning on doing this dish, you're going to want to start it first. But getting started. An optional step for the legs would be the French stem. That's taking all the skin off the end of the bone so it looks prettier when cooked. Run your knife all the way around the bone, cutting through any silver skin and tendons. Then using the back of the knife, scrape up to the knuckle. Free it up and use a towel to rip it off as one big piece. So first, we need a salt cure. So we're going to make a salt and herb cure for the legs. That's called green salt. Original name, I know. Take fresh parsley, leaves only, but save those stems for the stock. We'll use those in a second. A few sprigs of thyme, just the leaves. I know, it's tough. You'll be okay. 2 cloves of garlic, a 1/4 teaspoon of black peppercorns, about 10 juniper berries, and 2 tablespoons of kosher salt. But wait, what the heck is a juniper berry? Well, it's actually not even a berry at all. It's the female cone of a juniper tree, and it's what gives gin its distinct piney flavor. Moving on. Take all that and buzz it in your food processor. I have this handy mini one, but you can use whatever gets the job done. Mortar pestle, coffee grinder, heck, you could probably smash it up pretty good with a knife if you had to. But it should look something like this. And that is your green salt. Now rub all the mixture over your legs. Well, not your legs, the duck legs. Now it's important to note that I'm using 4 legs for this, so if you only did 1 duck, you'll need to half the mix. Be sure to get both sides and place them in the fridge overnight. Now take all that fat you saved. Cut it up so it's all of similar size, like 2 inches or so. Put it in a pan and cook it on medium-low heat until all that fat renders out. You'll want to stir frequently so it doesn't stick. It might not look like it's doing much at first, but after some time it'll shrink down until it's fully submerged. Keep cooking. You'll know it's done when it's golden brown and looks like cracklings. Now strain it and try to push out as much fat as you can. Save the fat and skin. So now that it's sat overnight, the next day you're going to want to rinse and dry your legs thoroughly. Place them in an oven-proof container. But let's take a break while we slice a lemon. Cover the legs with the fat you made, 2 garlic cloves, 2 sprigs of thyme, and 4 lemon slices in a bay leaf. Place in a 300-degree oven for about 2 hours. Even if the meat begins fully submerged, as it cooks it will tighten up and possibly raise out of the oil, like this. So it's important to check it and add more fat if needed. All out of duck fat? Just use some extra virgin olive oil, or another flavorful fat of choice. You'll know it's done when a paring knife slides in and out of the meat easily. Then chill it again until you're ready to use it. Here's a pro tip. When it's time to cook, wrap the bones with wet paper towels and a layer of tinfoil over it. This will prevent them from burning under the high heat of your broiler. Place them in the broiler for about 10 to 15 minutes until the skin is nice and crispy. Mileage varies based on your oven, so just be watchful. Then pull it out, let it rest, and then remove the thigh bone and cut it in half. That thigh meat makes for a great sandwich, salad, or even cooked into pasta. This is Daddy's lunch. Confit is a preservation technique that's been around for hundreds of years. Then it can stay submerged for weeks or longer without going bad. In fact, I've heard it even tastes better if you let it age a little, but I'm way too impatient for that. Now let's not waste all those bones. Let's make a stock. It may sound daunting, but it's actually pretty easy. It just takes a little time. Roast your bones at 500 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 minutes. Take them out and rub them down with 2 tablespoons of tomato paste and place in the oven for 5 to 10 minutes until there's some nice caramelization on the paste. It doesn't have to be on every single bone, just make sure it's kind of even so that you don't have some raw spots and burnt spots. Deglaze the pan with red wine and scrape up all the cooked bits. Put it all into a large pot. Also roast your veg. That's 1 onion, 2 carrots, 2 celery stalks, all diced medium. Add that to the pot with the bones. Then add 2 bay leaves, half a teaspoon of black peppercorns, a few thyme sprigs, and your parsley stems from earlier. Cover with cold water, bring to a bare simmer, cook for at least 2 hours, but I usually let mine go for about 6 to 8 hours. Be sure to skim off any foam, fat, or impurities that comes up. There's a term for this, but if you've seen my beef stew video, you already know it. And once you strain it, you now have a nice duck stock. To go a step further, after straining, I put it in another pan and reduce it by half. Then refrigerate it and scrape off any fat that separates from it. Then you have a gorgeous, fat-free chunk of gelatin that will act as a base for any sauce. Now for a few side components. We'll start with pickled shallot. Get a small pot, add a half a cup of sugar, half a cup of vinegar, and bring to a simmer. Now slice some shallots. Once your solution has come to a simmer, add your shallots. Cook 2 minutes or so until they begin to turn translucent. You're done. Now get another pot. Half a cup of sugar, half a cup of water. Bring to a boil. Pour dried cranberries into a bowl, about 3/4 of a cup or so. Pour in your boiling liquid, let sit until cool. Now you have macerated cranberries. How easy is that? So a classic component with duck confit is duck fat roasted potatoes. They're delicious, they're crispy, they're rich. It's a fantastic dish. If you haven't had it, you gotta try it. But for this, I wanted to do a different spin on it. How about sweet potatoes instead? Peel them and cut them into your shape of choice. You can do planks, you can do rounds, or even diced. Coat them in duck fat, season with salt and pepper, and roast for 15 to 20 minutes at 350 degrees. This can be done ahead of time, then left in your fridge until you're ready to cook. To finish, heat up a pan with more duck fat and sear on both sides. This is sped up, but it still doesn't take long at all. The sweet potatoes have a lot of sugar in them, so you gotta watch to make sure they don't burn. Now they don't get as crispy as your classic duck fat potatoes, but man, they taste good. Anything with bitter components is great for confit because it cuts through some of that richness. I chose Brussels sprouts. We're gonna roast them. Remove the stems and cut them in half. Now don't get rid of any of the leaves that fall off, because that's my favorite part. They get all crispy, it's great. Toss them in olive oil, salt, and pepper, and roast at 400 degrees until cooked through. 5 to 10 minutes should do the trick. Here's another great garnish you can use: blistered orange segments. Cut off each end of the orange and run a knife in a curved motion to remove the skin. For each cut, you're following along the inside of the previous cut until no skin remains. And pick up your orange and shave any missed pieces. Then run your knife beside the wall of one segment, stopping right before you get to the core. Do the same on the other side to remove the first segment. Repeat this, but now when you get to the bottom, you can just scrape the segment free. Continue until all pieces are removed. And squeeze out any juice that remains in the skin. Chop up about half of those to garnish your sauce with. Using a blowtorch, heat each segment until it begins to char. This is totally optional, so don't worry if you don't have a torch. And the duck breast is about the easiest part in this whole thing. Season both sides of your duck with salt, pepper, and freshly grated nutmeg. I like to go pretty heavy on the nutmeg. Now you're gonna start skin side down in a cold pan. That's very important. You got a lot of fat to render out if you want a nice crispy skin. Set the heat to medium and let it cook until that skin is dark golden brown. The duck is gonna cook a lot longer on the skin side than on the other side. Flip it, Turn the heat down if necessary, and let it cook until it reaches a temperature of 130 to 135. Set it aside and let it rest for at least 5 minutes before you slice into it. And slice the meat across the grain on a slight bias. The thickness of the slices is totally up to you. I like them moderately thin. To make your bourbon sauce, you'll want to start by sweating some shallots and garlic over low heat with a little bit of the duck fat. Then remove from heat and add 1 shot of bourbon. Return to heat. Careful, it's flammable. Cook out that alcohol. Add your orange juice that you saved. Add a spoonful of your reduced duck stock. Once it's melted and slightly thick, turn off the heat. Add a tablespoon of cold butter and whisk vigorously until fully incorporated. Constant movement is extremely important to prevent the sauce from breaking. This sauce needs to be done right before serving. If that butter cools, it'll solidify again. Then add some of those chopped orange segments and some chopped parsley. As an extra element to this dish, thinly slice some of that crispy skin. You may need to re-crisp it in the oven before using. So duck is extremely versatile and can be used in many ways. I hope this video was helpful in demonstrating how to tackle it. And now that you have some ideas on how to use it, you can create your own duck dish at home. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and let me know in the comments your favorite way to make duck. Till next week, good night. I do want to explain that I've edited this. I do want to explain that I've edited this video to. I do want to explain that I've edited this video. Oh my god.